Today, we're going to take a tour of the busiest, most complicated, and by far the most common factory on the entire planet. And the best part, you don't even need a ticket because you are made of trillions of them. Yeah, we're talking about the cell, the absolute fundamental building block of all life.
So let me ask you a question. When you think most important factory, what pops into your head? Maybe some giant car assembly line or a super high-tech plant making computer chips? Well, here's a little hint for you. The factory I'm talking about, it's smaller than a single grain of sand.
That's right. This isn't some building halfway across the world. It is literally inside you. Right this second, there is something like 37 trillion of these little microscopic powerhouses working around the clock just to keep you going. They are the cell.
So, what is a cell exactly? Well, it's the smallest thing possible that we can actually call alive. And honestly, the best way to wrap your head around it is to just stick with that one big idea. It's a tiny, unbelievably efficient, self-running factory. If you can remember that, everything else is going to click right into place.
You know, every great factory has to start with a set of blueprints. So how in the world did we discover the plans for this microscopic marvel? Well, it all started, believe it or not, with a simple piece of cork.
So, way back in 1665, a guy named Robert Hooke was looking at cork under an early microscope. He saw all these little empty boxes, which he called cells. But here's the thing, he was basically just looking at the empty rooms of an abandoned factory. It wasn't until later that Anton Leeuwenhoek, with a much better microscope, peered inside and saw the actual living tenants running the whole show. Okay, so once we could actually see these little factories, we realized they weren't all built from the same blueprint. In fact, pretty much all of life is based on one of two fundamental designs.
On one hand, you've got the prokaryotic cell. The easiest way to picture this, think of it like a scattered bachelor pad. There's no main office, no nucleus. All the important stuff is just kind of floating around. But then you've got the eukaryotic cell. This is the well-structured house with a different organized room for every single job.
All right, so let's stick with that super organized house model for a minute, the eukaryotic cell, because within that design, we find two specialized versions that basically run our world, the plant factory and the animal factory.
And what's so cool here is how their structure totally defines what they do. A plant cell, it's disciplined, it's structured, it has a tough, rigid cell wall to give it support. An animal cell, on the other hand, is flexible and free. Because it doesn't have that wall, it can move around, it can change its shape, and it can form all the dynamic parts of our bodies. Okay, enough with the history and the blueprints. We know the basic models. Now it's time to grab our hard hats because we're going on a high-speed tour of the factory floor to meet the real workforce, the organelles.
First up, the head office. Meet the nucleus. This is the undisputed boss of the whole operation. It holds the master blueprints, all the DNA, and it sends out every single order, managing everything that happens in the factory.
Next, let's head down to the power plant, the mitochondria. You've probably heard them called the powerhouse of the cell, and for very good reason. These guys are responsible for generating all the energy, what we call ATP, that keeps the entire factory running. Now over here on the main assembly line, we've got the ribosomes. I like to think of them as the factory's chefs. They get recipes sent down from the nucleus, and they follow those instructions to cook up proteins, which are the actual machines and building blocks the factory makes. So, once a protein gets made, how does it get where it needs to go? Well, that is the job of the Golgi body. This is basically the factory's internal Amazon delivery system. It sorts the proteins, it packages them up, and it ships them out to exactly where they need to be.
Of course, any factory this busy is going to produce some waste. That's where the lysosomes come in. These are the essential cleaning staff. They're the janitors that break down old parts and get rid of any junk, keeping the factory floor absolutely spotless.
And if we're touring one of those plant factories, we get to see a very special department you won't find in an animal cell, the chloroplasts. Think of these as the factory's built-in solar panels. They capture energy straight from the sun to make their own food. It's an absolutely incredible piece of natural engineering. So, we've got a fully functioning factory. It's working great. But what happens when business starts booming? Well, any successful factory needs to expand. So how do cells do it? And cell division isn't just about making more. It's fundamental to life itself. It is how we grow from a single cell into a full person. It's how our bodies repair themselves when we get a cut, and it's how life passes its blueprints down to the next generation.
And cells have two amazing ways to pull this off. First, there's mitosis. The best way to think of this is just a simple copy-paste. It makes a perfect identical clone of the original cell. That's for growth and repair. But then there's meiosis. This isn't a copy-paste. This is a creative remix. It's used for reproductive cells, and it shuffles the genetic deck to create something new. So one is for cloning, the other is for creating. It's a crucial difference.
And you know, that really is the whole secret. The moment you stop thinking about these complicated biological terms and you just start picturing this busy, organized little factory, this whole complex world suddenly makes so much more sense.
So the next time you think about biology, just take a second and remember this. You are not one single thing. You are a walking, talking civilization of 37 trillion of these microscopic factories, all working together in perfect harmony. I mean, that is just an absolutely mind-blowing thought.
Which, of course, leaves us with one final huge question. We've seen the factory floor, we've met the workers, we know how it runs. But if every single cell is a factory, what is it that they're all building together? Think about that for a bit.